So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Antoni Biernet, that is the director of the Professional Association of Sociology and Political Science in Catalonia. And I am Lídia Arroyo. I am the coordinator of the academic committee of this association. It is called COLPIS, no, in Catalan, no, this Catalan Association of Professionals of Sociology and Political Science in Catalonia. And this event is co-organized from COLPIS and also from the local committee of the European Sociological Association. And the goal of this webinar is to talk about challenges for youth of post-pandemic societies in terms of education and new forms of work. And for this reason, we count with several international experts and also Catalan experts on the topic of youth, education, and new forms of work. We count, first of all, we will listen to Rafael Merino, that is our Catalan expert in the youth reality. He has a long trajectory on the studies on youth and transition from training and education to the labor market. Okay. And now she is the coordinator of the research group of research and education and labor in the Autonomous University of Barcelona, the GREAT group in UAB, and also is a researcher at our international network of a study of city youth. And she is also a professor in the Inter-University Master of Youth and Society. Okay, and later we will count with Tinca Lukan, and it will be very interesting to have this both perspective from Catalonia and also the international perspective. That Tinca Lukan is from Slovenia. And she is settled in Ljubljana, and she's a PhD researcher at the University of Ljubljana. One moment, okay, it's okay. And she is managing the managing director of Taking Up Space. It is an institute for shared experience and places, and her research focuses on youth studies and labor markets and also the creator economy. And we also had the Professor Marina Galstan from Armenia, but for the last minute urgency, she couldn't come, but she sent us our presentation, and perhaps we can show some of her results on the situation in Armenia. The Marina Galstan is the director of the Center for Education Research and Consulting in Armenia. And we can share with you her email, just in case you are interested in her research, and you can ask questions about this topic. And now I leave the floor to Rafael Merino to talk about the Catalan reality.
Thank you, Lídia. Buona tarda, good afternoon or good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me or for the invitation to explain some of my research, or more than research, my reflection about the issue, the topic of education, work, and youth. Okay, can I share the screen just to show a few slides? Can you see the slide?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so first idea, reading the title of the conference of the talk about the new work or the post-pandemic societies. This is my first reflection. I'm not sure what does it mean when we talk about post-pandemic societies. I think there are at least two approaches. The first approach, we can see or we can listen to some people who say everything is changing, everything will change. So the pandemic is a big crisis, and everything will change. We are going to a new world, new society, in worse or better. I don't know. This is one approach. Okay. The other approach is the pandemic is just a break. So we will come back as before. Nothing will change. So these both approaches, probably both are not true, but there are two ways to look at the pandemic and the post-pandemic. So in my opinion, as a scientist, our duty is just to collect data or to do research to see what's going on. And it's really hard because now we can have some short-term effects or impact, but we can see in the long term what will be the effect or the impact on the post after the pandemic. Okay, so this is my first idea. Going to the main topic and the education and work, I would like to show you just a short data, recent data about the impact of the pandemic in the short term. Okay, just to have an overview about what's going on in this transition from education to work, or what's going on in the education system, in labor market for young people, and so on, and what are the most recent data about the impact of the pandemic. Okay. The first figure shows the evolution of early leavers from school or from education. This is a common known indicator. And so we can see how in the last 15 years, we had almost 35% of early leavers in Catalonia. This data is from Catalonia. So the slope is going down. And in 2019 and 2020, again, the early leavers was increasing just before the pandemic. Okay. And after the pandemic, the trend is going down again. So a lot of discussions we have about why this indicator is going down. Mostly there are two reasons. First is the lack of job opportunities. This is a concept, the cost of opportunity. When you see, we will see later on, the increase of youth unemployment, young people stay more at the school. But this is not the only reason of that. I believe there are another reason, more, let me say, more social, more educational. There is a national goal, for instance, or a commitment to reduce this rate of school, the early school leaving. Is not only explained by the lack of job opportunities. This is my opinion. Okay. Sorry. There are two causes, but there are some consequences. about this process of decreasing of early leavers from school. One of the consequences is the increase of demand of post-secondary education. This is the next slide. The last September, in the media, in Catalan and Spanish media, was a news about thousands of young people who applied for a vocational training seat. They they haven't any seat in the vocational training course they wanted to go, because thousands of young people wanted to go to vocational training. This is one reason is for that. More young people stay at the school and they stay longer than the compulsory education. There are other reasons, because many young people want to study in particular branches. For instance, computer, for instance, healthcare, for instance, sport activity, or video and image, and these kind of branches. They are really popular among young people, and then they don't find the course, the specialized course in vocational training offer. Okay, so this is in the agenda, the political agenda in educational policy, how to improve, how to give young people what they want in vocational training. There are another consequence is the increase of young people who want to go to the university. This is a figure in the examination to get access to university. We say the selectivity examination. So we can see a jump, an important jump between 2019 and 2020. Okay. More or less 5,000 more young people who went to do this examination. This is one reason. This, there is a demographic reason. There was more young people in the cohort, but there was another reason. It was the lockdown. During the lockdown, in the last term of 2019, the assessment or the policy was the assessment should be easier for young people. So more young people pass the academic track, the baccalaureate. So more young people after the academic track wanted to go to the university. There are other questions about university. For instance, we have an increase of open university, the enrollment in open university. We have an increase of, we say, non-traditional students, young adults, for instance, who drop out of university but come back later. We also have other young people coming from vocational training that they go to the university. So the university, the higher education institutions have a lot of different students rather than the traditional conventional student. Okay. If we look at the labor market for young people, we can see the youth unemployment. So we can see the line, the continuous line. This is the youth unemployment. We can see clearly the effect of the economic crisis after 2008. So the rate increased until 40% in 2013. Then the rate was decreasing according to the economic economic development and growth. And just in the pandemic, the youth unemployment increased again. And we can see now in the last number of the of the third term of this year, the youth unemployment is going down again. So you can see the both peaks, the pandemic peaks is lower than the previous economic crisis peak, okay? And now let me say the economic recovering is giving more job opportunities for young people. One interesting thing here we can see there is always a distance between youth unemployment and adult unemployment, more or less double. In the crisis or in the economic growth, the difference between youth unemployment and adult unemployment is the double. It's like a constant in our labor market. Okay. Another interesting topic is the temporary jobs. We can say the precariousness, or we measure the precariousness about the temporary jobs. Now we can see the rate of temporary jobs is increasing when the economic development and growth is going up. It's also going up the temporary jobs for young people. And it's interesting that this rate is practically the same in the adults. The 15% of adults have temporary jobs, but the young people has increased from 40 to 53%. Okay, this is the there are all the indicators of labor, but I have picked just this indicator to show this idea of increasing of precariousness of jobs for young people. Okay. Another indicator is, okay, young people are getting more and more jobs, but what kind of jobs they're getting? So this is the last, the most updated data about contracts of young people. And you can see the most important is low skill industry workers. So they get jobs in the industrial manufacturing sector is dynamic now in the Catalan economy. The second is social and legal services assistant. Okay, it's a low skill in the tertiary sector. And then you can see catering workers, waiters, workers in restaurants and so on, shop assistants, healthcare workers, unloading, restocking and transport workers. This is obviously related to logistics, a sector with is increasing a lot the last months. Okay. And cleaning staff. This is the most occupations, contract occupations in the last September. Okay, so this data is just a selection, a short overview about what's going on in education and work, and if we can look this impact in the short term. So after that, I was thinking about challenges. Okay, and to be honest, I tried to think in new challenges, but to my mind, it came all challenges. For instance, these challenges. First, what about the school living? I would say I would like to forget the need level. I have no time to explain why I don't like this level. Okay, but I think it's not a good definition of young people. But we still have 15 of young people who leave the school without qualification. So the main challenge for them is to give some provided them some skills. We can say the second chance opportunities. So one big challenge is how to improve these second chance opportunities, for instance, related to the Youth Guarantee Program or other basic programs, basic vocational training programs, and so on. Okay. The second challenge is related to vocational training. So in vocational training, we have several dilemmas or several topics to discuss or in the agenda. First is that vocational training should be focused on youth interest, what they want to do, or on the contrary, vocational training must focus on what companies need. So this is a difficult balance. For instance, if a lot of young people want to study sport activities, do they find jobs in this sector after the training? Big question, okay? Another question related to vocational training. If we compare how young people choose between vocational training and academic track, what are the criteria? They want to go to vocational training because they really want to choose vocational training, or they want to go to vocational training because they are not able to go to academic track because they have no records or no enough grades, or they are bored of studying mathematics, history, and so on. So this is a big issue, a big challenge. Regarding the higher education institutions, we have the dropout. It's not a recent topic. One of the consequences of increasing the students at the university, particularly non-traditional students, is the probability or the risk to drop out is higher. So we have a problem on that. Okay, how to make easier the student life at the university when, for instance, we have many students who work at the time they are studying, they also work. Okay, or young adults, as I mentioned before. So we say more and more we have more complex pathways or itineraries inside the university. So how to cope with these complex itineraries. And a classic topic, the overqualification. If we train more and more young people at the university and they get the diploma, the degrees, what will happen after in the labor market? Okay, we have some data about the overqualification. It could be between 10, 20, 30%, on depends on the field of study, of course. We still have a lot of young people who, with higher education diploma, with low skill or medium skill jobs. This is a very big issue or challenge. This is related to the next challenge, talking about labor market. This is a classical, let me say, what's the quality work, the decent work. Now the Catalan and Spanish people, we are discussing in the agenda, in the Spanish agenda, the reform of labor market, how to reduce the temporary jobs, how to improve the quality of work, how to improve, for instance, salaries, wages, and so on. Okay, but they are not new challenges. Okay, and of course, we still have the social inequalities challenge, the equal of opportunity, gender gap, or other social gaps in education and work and so on. So to finish my short presentation, thinking about this question, new forms of work. Have we some new things to think about? Let me say, and I think at least two big topics. Many people are discussing on those topics. The first is the digital transformation, digitalization of work, companies, the life, and so on. Okay, so this is a big topic. The digital skills. Have young people the digital skills needed to the labor market, and I think young people are best prepared rather than adult people in this topic, obviously, but not all young people are well prepared to this new economy, digital economy, the platform economy, and so on. I think this is a big issue. And the second big issue is the Green Deal. Okay, how to now, as you know, in Glasgow, they are holding the summit of climate change and so on. So this is a big issue, not only for young people, of course, but what could be the role of young people? We can see a role in social movements. Many young people is in demonstration, training for a change. But it would be possible to go from social protest, from social movements to labor market, to transform the labor market, to find and to create jobs in the green economy. So there are two big issues just to think about, just to discuss with all of you. So thank you very much. This is my thoughts, my reflection about the education and work in post-pandemic societies, and I'm open, of course, to your questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafa. Very interesting, all your thoughts and all the dimensions that you show in your presentation about the educational, this inspiring reflection about the post-pandemic, and the consequences, and at the end, this issue of the future of work, in terms of the new challenges. And here I leave the floor to Tinca Lukan to talk about this new work and new forms of work to be tackled with the perspective of Ljubljana. Tinca, your microphone.
Sorry. Yeah. So thanks for inviting me. My name is Tinca, and I'm a PhD researcher at University of Ljubljana. And I will present the case of Slovenia about youth, but I will focus mainly on labor market and employment relations, and to a lesser extent on education. So the sources of my data derive from Statistical Bureau of Republic of Slovenia and from Special National Youth 2020 report, which was a very extensive qualitative and quantitative research project that examined various aspects of youth and their life. So as we know, youth is a distinct social group, and they are especially vulnerable on the labor market. They possess digital skills nowadays, which allows for thriving in the 21st century. However, transition to the labor market is far from smooth for youth, especially because they lack relevant experience. They have skills, but not experiences, and they lack social capital. So that's why this transition to labor market is not so smooth in Slovenia. And basically everyone is on their own and on their own social network they derive on. So regarding youth in the Slovenian labor market, flexible employment is one of the biggest challenges. Youth represent above average in non-standard forms of employment, such as student work, fixed-term work, part-time work, occasional work, and agency work. And what is more, they also take more risks related to non-standard employment. They work on atypical times, such as at night, on weekend, outside working time. They're in precarious working relations. As you can see here, we see that approximately 60% of young people work on atypical time in Slovenia, which is quite a big share. What is special characteristic in Slovenia is that a lot of students work on so-called student work contracts. The number is very high. In the years before the pandemic, approximately 33,000 of young people was involved in this student work, and 2/3 of them were working overtime. However, 90% of them received income that was below poverty line, which is kind of logic, but still they work a lot, yet they don't receive a lot of money, and they also study at the same time. And for 44% of working students, this work represents their primary source of income. And as already said, these jobs are precarious, flexible, and non-standard. And we can speak about this student work as some kind of social corrective. It, on the one hand, it helps to get relevant experiences. On the other hand, there's often mismatch with skills, such as, for example, the students work in cafeteria, yet they study, for example, sociology, philosophy, and there's this skill mismatch, so to say. And moving on to COVID, student work in the times of COVID-19, it affected student work harshly and the most of all types of employment, because the share of people working through student contracts fell for 50%. And compared to Catalonia, as Rafa said, this employment fell more than in the times when economic crisis post-2008 hit in Slovenia. So this time it was worse. And this has, of course, societal implications, because a lot of students needed to move back home because they relied on this income and they couldn't afford to live in Ljubljana, because there's another issue, housing crisis, and prices are going to the sky. And so they had to move back home, which means social isolation and lack of cultural and social capital and so on. So it comes with no surprise that this Youth 2020 report showed that a fear of unemployment among young people is high. It is the share of young people who were scared that they would not find employment was, for example, 22% in 2000 and 43% in 2008. In 2020, 40% of young people were scared that they wouldn't find employment after they finished the education. And this graph also shows another thing, which is that youth in Slovenia is polarizing on winners and losers. On this, there are people who fear unemployment and some who are really confident. And this clearly shows this rising polarization and inequalities that are clearly taking space in Slovenia. Furthermore, to avoid unemployment and to overcome this fear, students reported that they are willing to geographically move, take additional courses and learn more, or work part-time and for lower pay. Also, what is quite alarming is that 1/3 of them is willing to work for free, which is kind of interesting, but on the other hand, this volunteering experiences help to transition to the labor market. However, this could be then discussed whether it's some kind of exploitation of young people. There are also other interesting characteristics that I want to point out. Young people prefer to work in private sector in comparison to public, and they're very entrepreneurial. And this is because government, European Union, and universities took an initiative to really promote this entrepreneurial neoliberal mindset in students. And now the latest research shows that it has some implications, and it was successful because 1/3 of them agrees that their education gave them knowledge to start a company, and they are willing to do so. And what is also interesting is that work is becoming part of self-realization. They don't understand work as something you do for money, but they state that you need to love your work, you need to be fulfilled from your work, which is also interesting and shows in this neoliberal turn that clearly took place in Slovenia, especially during the latest crisis post-2008. So yes, this is it from my side. I want to just point out key takeaways. Flexible employment is one of the biggest challenges for young people in Slovenian labor force. And due to pandemic, the share of people working through student contracts fell for 50%, which has some harsh societal implications because there's also a lot of depression and anxiety among youth. And there's also fear of unemployment after finishing education. However, there's polarization on those who are insecure and those who are not. And yes, lastly, they're entrepreneurial, which is another typical transitional characteristic. So yes, that's it from me. It was a little, I was quite fast, I think. So thank you so much again, and I will stop sharing my screen now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tinca Lukan. Very interesting your insights about the Slovenia reality. No, and I think there are very, very hot points to be compared and shared with the Catalan reality. And now I will share with you the presentation of Marina Galstian, because for a personal reason, an urgency, she couldn't be able to be here. But I think it's interesting, her perspective in terms of the education and the impact of the pandemics in education. And I will share also her email, just in case some of you would like to contact her. Okay, I think I am sharing the presentation of Marina now. Could you confirm?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then Marina, she's the director of the Center for Education Research and Consulting in Armenia, have done this research about the education in the time of COVID in Armenia. The goal of her research was to evaluate the effectiveness of educational policy in Armenia during the COVID-19 with the help of analyzing the reach and quality of education in the scope of remote learning. No, I think all of us have this experience, and she evaluated the impact of this type of learning. she has done qualitative and quantitative research. It is very interesting also the state of art before the pandemic in terms of the challenges in education. For example, I think it is interesting, this data about before education, the educational system have these problems. An attractiveness of the teaching profession. It's very interesting also to compare with the Catalan and also Ljubljana reality. Also the lack of funding for education, and the education budget as a share of GDP stands is about 2% of all the GDP. And also another important issue that also you has raised, and Rafa in his presentation, is about the socioeconomic status of students and families has a significant impact on the student educational attainment, academic achievement, as well as professional orientation and admissions to universities. I think it's important also this issue in Armenia. Here, for example, in Catalonia, and later we can discuss the admission in universities perhaps is not such important, but this, and it is related with the educational attainment also, it's important. And it could be also related with the data from Tinca about Ljubljana and the precariousness of work. And the comparison with the post-pandemic results, I do first a general data about the reality that is very common, I think, in all countries. For example, this is important also, that 63% of surveyed teachers participated in the training for computer skills, and they notice that they have a lack of computer skills when they have to do the remote classrooms. And another issue important is the issue of the lack of, here I think it's also interesting in terms of the educational materials and the social inequalities in terms of the access to the internet to do the classes. And here we have that in general the people have internet connection, but the main one have internet, 82% and 86% with the mobile, but only 67% have a computer to do the classes. And I think it's an important data. I don't know the data here in Catalonia or in Slovenia, but I think it's an important data and interesting to be analyzed, how many students have the capacity to do the exercise in a computer. Another important data is about the impact of the remote learning. Wait, just a moment, because I have to move one thing in my screen. Okay, here, this is another important in terms of the feeling at the school and feelings in remote learning. For example, in terms of indifference, the remote learning, the students have more indifferences, more discomfort. The second one is very impact, and the joy and excitement, the face-to-face school is more joy and exciting for them. And the situation of alarm, I think it is related with the pandemics. And the fear also, it's higher in the remote learning than in school. And the fatigue, it is also interesting because the the students say that fatigue is more in the school, not at remote learning. So I think it's interesting. And I also would like to share the final conclusions. The main findings that she identified the transition to distance education has revealed that a number of social psychological problems for students which have not been properly paid attention to so far. The results of the study show that the majority of the students had a predominant feeling of anxiety. I think it's an important issue in terms of the impact of the remote learning. And for example, this one, the traditional classrooms teaching approach remained to be used during online lessons, which is in fact affected the quality of the learning processes. Is that the capacity of the translate the face-to-face teaching to the remote learning. Okay, here there are the results of the Marina presentation. And now, if you want, we can talk together about all these different inputs from different countries. We have here Rita Jimenez. She is the responsible of the Youth Commission of the Professional Association of Catalan Political Science and Sociology in Catalonia, and she's also Public International Affairs Consultant. If you want to do a comment about all these inputs.
Hi, thank you, Lídia, so much. Sorry, because I needed to connect through my phone. So let me know if you can't hear me well, so I can switch my microphone.
It's okay.
It was very interesting to hear about all the comparative studies in this conference. So thank you so much for explaining in detail about the experiences and the research. I also wanted to say that I'm a political science graduate, so I did not touch so much on the sociological part of all the aspects that you talked about. But as part of the targeted population of these studies, I found two things that were very interesting from the discussion. One was the fact that you mentioned that there's polarization on feeling more anxious or not so much about the future and the prospects of having a good employment and a good job in the end. And I think that's interesting because polarization is in fact a very general trend internationally in many aspects. And I think we really need to tackle the issue soon, because if not, all our societies, I think, will start to get more and more conflicted. So maybe that's something to think about. And also about, I really like the point of how to, from the Catalan point of view, right? That in the end, how can you get all this participation and activism that is happening amongst a big part of youth in Europe and in many parts of the world, and take it to the job force, right? Because in the end, we feel like we have a very desperate world. I think it's a very generalized idea that we don't have so much of a future as a generation, and that's very, very stressful. But it's also, so it's paralyzing. It's a moment, but it's also engaging at some point. But how do we translate it? Because in the end, we go to a job force that is pretty much traditional, even though there's obviously more entrepreneurship amongst the youth, because what do you do if there is no job market that you can access? You're very well educated, but most of the jobs tell you they're too educated to become part of the company. And that's very, very frustrating in the end. So what do? Do we protest more? If we protest, then there is no action, or we feel that there is no action taken. But if we don't, then we're paralyzed and we lose confidence. And if it's more general, then you have a whole generation that is frustrated. So maybe some things to discuss and to think about. And just if I may, the last comment on when you presented the Armenian case, there was a mention of mental health and how the education that was undergone last year through online courses really affected the young people. I was actually doing my thesis, my master's thesis, online. I was supposed to be on the other side of the world, but I couldn't travel. So I think it was a very generalized issue that happened, but I don't think it was so much about the online classes per se, but it was also seeing how, on top of being well educated and not having great perspectives of having the job that we want or that we would like to have, then on top of that we have a pandemic, and we're also pretty much blamed for the fact that we need more socializing, and we expected to be able to meet our colleagues. There were a lot of people that couldn't graduate, so the fact to not have this ritual at the end of your degree, be it undergrad or master's or a doctorate, I think it also very much affected the way that we saw the world. So mental issues were and still are a very huge issue to have in mind amongst the young people from everywhere. So those were my points, and if we can get the discussion going, I would be really glad to participate. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Rita. Rafa, Tinca, if you want to answer some of the comments.
Yes, can I say something? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I forgot to mention that platform labor is really important in this context, as already Rafa said. And I think polarization is happening in this context of platform labor, because on the one hand, you have young people who are highly paid, at least in Slovenia, who have really good jobs because they studied computer programming and so on, and they can really get rich with this kind of jobs. And on the other hand, you have this Volt and Glovo delivery workers and so on, which is completely precarious workforce. And I think this polarization is happening in the context of this digital or platform labor, or however we call it. And also another a bit cynical comment regarding New Green Deal and young people being very progressive when it comes to views on nature and so on. I am right now conducting a really interesting research on LinkedIn and youth there and how they represent themselves. And you can see that they use this green narrative for self-branding. And I think this is a bit cynical remark, if you ask me, because I don't know if posting on LinkedIn is something, I don't know, just
if I can add on that comment, I really agree. Unfortunately, I agree, because in the end, especially I think from the Western perspective, there's a lot of click activism. So it's not so much as greenwashing in the end also, but it's most about let me share something and I've done my job today to save the world, right? But I think we live in a moment of so much information, and the super connectivity that we have at all times makes for the perfect moment to be connected and to actually have great activism. But since we are not really taught to self-organize and to plan and to really take action, because I'm not sure about the causes of this, direct causes, but I think one of the things is that we might see how everything is so negative most of the time, that there's war, there is famine, there is so many things happening, and feeling that you're so privileged probably gets you to think, so there's two options. You can either pass and be off the political context, and that means just not knowing about news, not knowing about anything that's really going on around you besides friends and family, which is fine, which could be fine. But then there's the other side of, I have to be connected to everything that is happening, and that also creates a problem for mental health as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening, but I agree that there's a lot of greenwashing, not only by companies, but green sells right now. So there's always the trend that sells, right?
Can I say something?
Rafa.
Okay. Well, we all are cynical. It's not only for new people, of course. No. But we can say, okay, there's no way, no solution, chaos for the future, or we can think a little bit more optimistic. So that for the reason I mentioned before, the challenge is how to go from protest, social protest, to social transformation. So as far as I know, it is not a new topic. This is for social movements for at least 40 years, 4 decades before. So, but nowadays the green movement, Friday for Future, and so on, is more focused on protest and consumerism. How to modify the consumer attitude and behavior and so on. So the challenge is how to pass from consumer to prosumer. So how to combine the production and consumption, and how to transform. This is the greenwashing exists. There are many companies, they use the green marketing, the greenwashing. It's true. But this is again the challenge: how to go beyond the greenwashing and how to believe in a green economy. Okay, so this the challenge is how to make alliance between social movements, policymakers, and companies themselves. Okay, this is one question. Another question that sorry, because it's difficult to pronounce, entrepreneurship. Okay, I think it's a big deal, but it's a big fake. Okay, there's a strong discourse or hope on entrepreneurship for young people, but I haven't put the data, but in young Catalan people, I think not more than 3, 4, 5% of young people are we say autonomous work. Okay. So, and this is not increased the last years. So entrepreneurship is just for few cases, qualitative, let me say, it's not for generic situation, okay? Polarization, again, is not a new issue. It's not a new topic. It's all topic in the capitalist economies from a long time ago. But at least this polarization is related to education, to the level of education. That means higher the education level, higher the opportunities, and less education, less opportunities. Okay, and the digitalization is a new way of polarization. So digital skills are not equal distributed by young people across the educational system. It's a big challenge, mostly for second chance opportunities, vocational training, a low level vocational training, and so on. And finally, it's not my research field, but a colleague of mine in my department has carried out a research focused on how Marina research focus, how online teaching, how affected the outcomes, the anxiety, again, the inequalities, poor families who are not access to not only computer. This is a big problem about the access to internet, the white, what is it in English? To have a big access to internet services, okay? So I can send to you the research and the reference if you are interested in, okay?
Thank you, Rafa. If you can share the information in the chat, it could be great. Later we know it's not necessary now, but in some minutes. Okay, if you have any comment, I think we have here very key players in Catalan society in terms of youth. If you want to have an intervention, Esther Alvesa, Raimon, Joan, Mireia Sala. Rita, you have you want to say something else?
Because I think thank you, Lídia. I wanted to also leave the floor to anyone else who wants to speak, obviously, but just going over what Rafa said, I think, yes, it's something that has been happening for 40 plus years, all the issues that we have talked about, but in the end, it all comes down to one thing, right? There is a system in place, and I don't want to position myself too much, but in the end, it's how can we really reach an equal opportunity world if we don't solve other issues that come first. We need to tackle education, we need to tackle the economy, we need to tackle so many different aspects, but it all comes down to modifying the system and being able to transform it. But I think that for now, young people my age, I'm now 29 years old, so there's obviously 2 more generations that are younger right now, but it's the frustration of not being able to know what to do. So there's the fact that right now we think that in 2050 we might not have a world, and that's something that the world keeps repeating to us. Just if there's no time to transform anything. So there's going to be polarization, even for the people who have high education. I have been to, I put myself as an example because there is no other young people right here, I think, and I am a very special case because I was privileged to have a very good education. I was privileged to spend most of my all my secondary school and part of my higher education abroad. I was very privileged to know another language, but I went to one of, I was unemployed last year for a long time, and I did not see a perspective of having a job that I wanted to do. So I was going to accept anything in the end. And I spent a lot of money in my education, and there's people that can't afford it. But I could not find a job, but a lot of highly educated people can't find jobs and can't find qualified jobs. So that's a very big issue. I mean, if we can't find jobs, then people that are less educated, how can they aspire to to get more education, become more well-trained, and then give something else to society if society rejects us? And just to finalize, I went to a convention to find, it's a job convention that is organized, and one of the specialists that was assessing me in my CV told me that I should leave out the fact that I speak Mandarin, Chinese Mandarin, from my CV, because due to the fact that I was so highly qualified, there might be a lot of people that in HR would not want to hire me due to my high education. So I find that unacceptable. But we are in this moment, and we find ourselves in this position, and you're frustrated and you have nowhere to turn to, because also the administration is there, but it's mostly there to provide services for entrepreneurship for the privileged, because you cannot be an entrepreneur if you don't have enough money to be an entrepreneur. So I just, sorry about the passion, but it's just something that
No, thank you very much, Rita. It's crucial. No.
Yeah, sorry, I was late. I was working, so I couldn't came before. I think we cannot generalize the situation, the young situation in Spain and related to another countries. I think in Spain there is a really tricky situation for young people in general. In education, I don't know. I am not referring to the all the tools, all the pandemic moment, and that I think it works out very well from the policies, from the governments. What I am saying that in general, some action have to been taken in our country about young people, because it is really impressive, the numbers of unemployment, young people, the age that people can live from their families, and I think that is the reality. In fact, I think that is not something new. It has been for many years, but it is a reality in our country. I am talking about the South countries, not maybe in Germany or in another country that the situation is completely different. But in my opinion, it is a general explanation. You know, it's a general view. But I think young people here in our country are not in a good context, in a good place. I think that there should be good young social policies for people leave the families before, and mostly places, labor market places, because you are saying, Rita, that you are fortunate because you could you have the chance to go out to study outside to Spain, but not all people can do that, you know. So it's not easy. I think it's not easy for the next generations.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Esther. Very important, this view, because Tinca, here in Spain and Catalonia, the youth unemployment is one of the main challenges now, and from the other crises that, like Rafa showed, it was one of the main groups that affect more the crisis. I don't know if the same in your country in terms of youth unemployment. No, they are the main group of affected by the crisis.
Yes, it's similar, I think, because even I remember during the last crisis, Spain and Slovenia were often compared. in terms of how hard it hit and how bad it was and so on. So I think numbers are quite similar in Slovenia as in Spain. But I don't know for Catalonia. I don't have numbers, exact numbers. But yeah, I think it's similar. But I have another issue that comes to mind a lot in the last month when I was doing research, because I think that it always comes down to class. Because I think that privileged young people will always find work, and those who are from lower classes won't. And I don't know if it's a generational issue, but more class issue. I'm not sure. I have this thesis in my mind that I can't.
No, that is in general. This is in general.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time. All as less education, less job.
Yeah.
Tinca, and in the results of Marina, no, she also point this issue, no, of the the socioeconomical background and the impact.
Yeah.
No, and in this sense, I have a question comparing your presentation about the Tinca. You talk about the skill mismatch. To talk this kind of, as Rafa said, is overqualification. And my question is, this mismatch between the training and the labor market opportunities is related overqualification, or is related about the content of the academic degrees and trainings that are not connected with the labor market necessities? Here, from the Association of Professionals of Sociology and Political Science, is one of our goals, no? This mismatch or not about the contents of the degrees and the training, vocational trainings, and the labor market needs, or we are talking only about the overqualification and the social class issue? No, this is a question for both of us.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's mainly because things that are taught at the universities are unfortunately not relevant for the labor market and the demands that are there. And what is more, these students' jobs that are very prominent in Slovenia, they are really low-skilled jobs per se. Because this is some kind of, even employers use this because this is really cheap labor force, and otherwise during pandemic they wouldn't survive. And it was cheaper to have students because they don't have so much, they don't have to pay a lot to them. So I think I think it's both what you said. I think on the one hand it's mismatch. On the other hand, on the one hand it's overqualification. On the other hand, it's this mismatch. Yeah. So I think it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a really big issue to say just a few words about the mismatch between education and labor market and jobs and competence and so on. First, when we say mismatch, when we put the focus on education, on labor market, usually we put the focus on education, but we can put the focus on labor market. And in the sense that labor market is not able to take benefits of the training done by young people, for instance.
Very nice, Rafa.
It's not only a question that the institutions of education are not so good for labor market. Okay, this is one point. Second point, when we say education must link to the needs of companies, labor market, and so on, but my question is, who knows those needs. And who knows those needs, not now, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Because at the university, and also in the vocational training in advanced level, we prepare young people for 20, 30, 40 years of active life. So this mismatch, when? Another question. It's more for Spanish and Catalan labor market. Many times the mismatch is a matter of time. If you do research, if you ask young people after getting a degree, if you ask 1 year after, the rate of overqualification could be really high. 3 years later, the overqualification goes between 10 and 30%. It really depends on the field of study, okay? For instance, arts and humanities, 30 or 40%, computer science, engineering, 5%, okay? It's important to say that, okay? But if you ask them 5 or 10 years later, the mismatch is more and more reduced. So this is a really big issue, topic about the mismatch. We have some data on universities and vocational training. And comes to my mind, in vocational training, again, we have between 70 and 80% of young people with a vocational training degree work in a job really related to their training. So globally is not bad, but if you are suffering in overqualification, obviously you are unhappy of that, okay? But to finish, because it's a big issue. The first idea I said, we can focus, we can put the focus on education or on labor market, okay?
Great, very interesting answer. Tinca, what do you think about this dimension? Is the same in your country, or you have some nuances?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this is a wonderful argument that it is labor market who isn't able to take advantage of education. I think this is really wonderful and really true, unfortunately. But regarding this mismatch, I just wanted to say that it happens mainly during the student years, when students are in these student jobs that are unique for Slovenian context, because really a lot of students need to work during their studies because this is their main source of income. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to live in Ljubljana and so on. And these student jobs exacerbate this mismatch because the offering on the side, because what is offered are service jobs, are healthcare jobs, are low performing jobs and so on. And students are for example, overly educated. During that time, they work with really different profiles of workers. I don't know if I said correctly, but this mismatch happens during their student years. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, nice data. The example of technological field, I think, it's very paradigmatic in these terms of when we think about the future of work, we think in technological field and job opportunities, but we are identifying now that the technological field needs these analytical skills also to have a good performance, in terms of, for example, and we identify now, the bias in technology, in artificial intelligence, for example, in gender bias or other social groups or technologies that don't accomplish their goals because they need more analysis, social analysis into their design, their implementation. And I think this is an important issue, that in terms of the Rafa said, this knowledge that the labor market are starting to incorporate, but we are talking about the future of work, because indeed in that moment they don't incorporate this knowledge. Okay, if any of you have any other comment, question, observation. Okay, then I think it has been a very, very interesting. The goal of this event, it was put into relation the context of Catalan reality in terms of youth. For this reason, we have Rafa Merino, that is one of the main experts on youth, labor market, and education in Catalonia. And here we have Tinca Lukan from Slovenia with her research on youth, also on labor market, and the contribution of Marina. In the chat, you can find her email. If you're interested in her research, you are free to write her. And thank you very much for your contributions, Rita, Jimenez, Esther Alvesa.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I
Bye.
Have a nice day. Good evening.
You too.
You too.